Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric Nerding series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. More specifically in this video, why FPGA cores are not emulation. I've been getting a metric crap ton of comments in every single MiSTer video, basically saying that MiSTer is nothing more than software emulation and that people are lying about what FPGA is. So we're going to be talking all about it today, and don't worry, I'm sure the comment section will turn into the Royal Rumble any minute now. So go on down there, grab a chair, hit somebody over the head with it, and we'll see what we can do. And honestly, before we get too far into this video, I want you to know very clearly, I do not care if you use FPGA cores, I do not care if you use software emulation or original hardware. If you know me and you've been watching the channel long enough, you know I am absolutely agnostic when it comes to how you play your games, because I use absolutely every single resource under the sun. I have way too big of an original hardware collection, especially on the PCB side, so we're going to have a fair and square fight and decide today exactly what FPGA is. But I'm going to tell you right now, repeat it with me, FPGA cores are not emulation. I cannot stress this enough. They are different things, and a lot of people seem to like to argue over the word emulation. They pick up a dictionary and they just basically say, well, anything that's not original hardware is emulation. And while you could make an argument for that on a technical level, if you open up the Merriam-Webster dictionary, we have to kind of think around what the word actually means and what the functionality of MiSTer FPGA, an Analogue Pocket, or any other FPGA device is doing. Because again, it really is down to that FPGA chip in the middle of a classic DE10 Nano, a MiSTer Pi, or any other FPGA device. Because FPGA chips run code completely differently than software emulators. They have parallelism versus having to do everything sequentially. Now, when coded correctly, they can 100% achieve the same result, but they do it in a different manner. Just think of it this way, the camera that I shoot everything for YouTube on runs off an FPGA chip, multiple in fact, inside of the camera body. Would anyone say that I'm emulating a camera? I don't think they would whatsoever. There's something about running games on an FPGA chip that make people think it's doing nothing more than emulation. Or take for an example the one I'm going to use primarily in this video, the Neo Geo AES and MVS. This is a zero slot board right here. It's the King of Fighters 2003, and this is when SNK Playmore was releasing games on these single boards to try to reduce down the cost. It's one of the weirder MVS boards out there, and it's one of my favorite parts of my Neo Geo collection. And basically all you do is plug it in and you play a game, and it's like you're playing King of Fighters 2003 for the first time again. And if we go over all the silicon on the board, when we talk about FPGA code, a decent amount of it is done via decaps of these chips. Different people, Furtech primarily, will go and actually take the silicon off of these boards and then basically melt or reduce down that epoxy top, the plastic top, to get down to the cellular level of what's actually on a chip, and then it's reverse engineered from there. If we take a look at one of the die scans, kind of loads up like the 56 days and you're trying to, air quotes, entertain yourself after school, you'll see here this is literally the silicon die that is inside of one of the chips of the Neo Geo. Every single gate, every single element of logic, every single path between one gate and another is laid up here on the chip, because it's what makes a Neo Geo in part. Now, of course, this is just one chip and one section of it, so it's not the entirety of the system, but basically every single bit of a Neo Geo AES MVS has been decapped, scanned, and reverse engineered from there, giving us that one-to-one accuracy on something like a Neo Geo core. So when you play Neo Geo on MiSTer FPGA with the core, you are playing original hardware. It doesn't matter if it comes in a different package. You can go ahead and reverse engineer these chips and make reproductions if you want from this work. Therefore, you're not emulating a Neo Geo in my opinion. MiSTer FPGA is just becoming a Neo Geo. Sure, it looks a little bit different, but at a fundamental level, it's doing the exact same thing as original hardware. Therefore, it is, in my opinion, original hardware as close as you can get and not emulation. And other makers are currently developing FPGA replacements for the CPU and Super Nintendos where the CPU has gone bad, because it's not like you can buy new old stock parts very easily. You'd have to have a board pull from a working SNES, and you really wouldn't want to do that. And honestly, if you put a cartridge in your Super Nintendo and start playing a game, and it just so happens to be that the CPU is running off FPGA code, either Verilog analog or VHDL versus an original CPU, would you say you're emulating a game at that point in time? Yes, it can be a philosophical argument, but the reality is it is different than emulation. It is replication, recreation, simulacrum, whatever you want to call it, but it isn't emulating at the same level and the same concept as software emulation. And obviously, you know I love my software emulators. I teach you how to do them, and the most recent one I talked about was Rich Whitehouse's Big Instinct emulator for Killer Instinct and Killer Instinct 2. It is now the de facto best way to play these two arcade games outside of owning original, very expensive arcade boards, and it basically keeps the dream alive for everyone, so I absolutely love software emulation. And again, trust me, it's not like I'm trying to convince you to enjoy anything more than the other. I have a very large collection of original arcade PCBs. I absolutely love them, and I'm constantly adding more to my collection. Games that emulate basically perfectly fine, but just because I've loved the original hardware for some reason or another, I want them in my closet, able to hook up to my supergun and play whenever I want. It is a very foolish thing to do, and I can't recommend it, but I do have a fun time doing it. Or there's other boards that basically don't emulate well whatsoever, where original hardware is the only way to go. There's so many different 3D boards out there that we don't have FPGA cores for, we don't have software emulation for, we basically just don't have the ability to play those games outside of real hardware. Konami Viper leading the charge. Hopefully we'll see software emulation improve one day. This is what it currently looks like in MAME, and I'll show you what it looks like on real hardware right now. So trust me when I say I absolutely love all of the above options. FPGA is absolutely incredible, software emulation keeps the dream alive for retro gaming, and original hardware just makes me happy. And of course there's some things that we just don't have FPGA cores, something like Dreamcast. I'm playing this on the Miu Flip right now. We can't play that on FPGA, but if we do one day have a Dreamcast FPGA core, it is going to function in a completely different way than a software emulator. It might achieve the exact same results, but it is going to be different. It's like trying to say every apple is the same apple. They are different objects. Yes, they are part of the same family, but they are completely different. And sometimes software emulation just doesn't do anywhere near as good of a job as FPGA. And unfortunately, gonna get Nintendo one more time, their NSO implementation of Nintendo 64 games is very hit or miss, oftentimes in the miss category. F-Zero on NSO I would say is an unplayable experience down to some frame pacing issues, where if you go over to the MiSTer FPGA core, it is absolutely spot on perfection, basically doing the exact same thing as original hardware. And I'm really not sure why there's those people out there that just want to tell you that FPGA is nothing different than emulation, and the reality is it's a completely different way to achieve a very similar result, because this footage right here could be MiSTer FPGA, it could be the Ari's emulator. I will let you vote in the description down below what you think this is, emulation or FPGA, but I will say when it comes to games that require response time and no latency, something like Mario and Luigi Dual Adventure here, a fan game on Nintendo 64, having the zero latency of MiSTer FPGA makes a game that requires very precise jumps just that much more playable than software emulation. And again, that's not a knock on software emulators, I use them all the time and they are incredible, but when you do stuff like this, look at die shots from the Neo Geo and then reverse engineer them, you just end up with a situation where you have a different way to do a very similar thing, but they are not the same thing. And I don't know why this angers people so much. They go down in the comments and say that we're all lying, that there is some sort of big Mr. Cabal out there, that we're trying to rip people off. The reality is I don't sell MiSTer FPGAs. I don't make $1 when you buy one that I show on the channel. I just like talking about this stuff and giving you guys more options when it comes to playing retro games. If you want to just use exclusively software emulation, I am happy for you. The only thing I care about is everyone continuing to play games. But there are so many people out there researching these topics, reverse engineering all the hardware to keep the fun alive, and that is the reality of this. You should just be having fun. There is no need to argue over what MiSTer FPGA or FPGA cores in general are compared to software emulation, opening up dictionaries and trying to define words and concepts in different means and ways, because trust me, don't just take the word emulation and try to apply it to everything. You need to think around the issue. It's as much of a philosophical argument as it is a technical one. When you take something like Vertex reverse engineering of all of the SNK chips, you just end up with a situation where this is exactly the same thing as real hardware. You load the game up, you play it, and you just have fun. And that is the fun part about FPGA. Sure, of course, every once in a while an FPGA core is going to have a bug. We report it, it gets fixed up in the code, and then it is taken care of. This is all a work in progress. It's all a moving target. You really haven't seen any single core end up at that final, it's 100% finished stage yet. I would say maybe something like Neo Geo is the closest, or something like that Motorola 68000 you just saw on the Neo Geo board is also applied into the Atari Jaguar core in the nuked version from the Mega Drive, all again just from reverse engineering. And sure, the Atari Jaguar core isn't perfect, it's still a work in progress, but I can't stress enough, the way FPGA cores function is completely different than the way software emulators function in the parallelism and everything else. And you'll see here, not very interesting to look at if you don't know what you're looking at, but this is basically just a complete reverse engineering of all the different logic on a decapped SNK chip, so you can understand exactly how it functions and lay it up in FPGA code. And you even have these schematics the Vertec put up, the different data registers here, all of the different blank selects, the render and select colors. This is basically just all of how the logic moves through that chip to end up producing a game and an image and a sound on your television, so that when you're playing, you're not thinking about a diagram like this, you're just thinking of playing Shock Trooper Second Squad. That's the reality of this. It just is a fun way to play video games. It obscures what it is doing, and in the end, it genuinely doesn't matter. If you want to just go down in the comments and say FPGA is just emulation, at the end of the day, it doesn't bother me whatsoever, because I'm happy with every single option we have as retro gaming fans to be able to play games. And trust me, in a lot of instances, even the imperfect emulation makes me happy. Like Model 2 in MAME, it isn't completely finished yet. It does have some graphical glitches compared to the original Model 2 emulator. Doesn't look as good, but I'm sure it'll look better by the time it's done. But unless you want to go out and buy original Model 2 hardware and have a lot of wiring in your house, it's the best you get, and it's still just as much fun as playing the real hardware. And the reality is, there's some boards we just don't have an FPGA, and software emulation is the end-all be-all, unless again you're like me and you like collecting a bunch of crap that you need to figure out how to store in the closet. I would love to see a Taito F3 FPGA core, and I'm saying right now that the MAME emulation is spectacular for it, and you can just go into MAME and play it today. It would basically be reinventing the wheel, but I want more than one wheel when it comes to stuff like my video game preservation. I love the original board. I don't hook it up all the time because it is cumbersome and bulky, but it's one of those things. If I want to play something like Riding Fight quickly, I'll probably just load up MAME. If there's an FPGA core, I would load that up instead. And if then nothing existed, I just have my original hardware to run anytime we want, and that's all I want is options. Or something like the Capcom CPS-3. As of the recording of this video, we do not have a core for this yet whatsoever, so unless you want to buy extremely expensive and extremely finicky real original hardware, something like Final Burn is going to be the de facto best way to play this game in my opinion. But what I want to stress is, does it really even matter what MiSTer FPGA or FPGA cores are? You need to remember the following: less care, more fun. Spend less time caring about what it's doing. Spend more time realizing the amount of fun it delivers to you. If you don't want an FPGA device, Analogue Pocket, something like the Tang, something like MiSTer FPGA or MiSTer Pi, you just don't have to grab them. That is the reality of this, but I don't understand the argumentative thing where people are trying to dissuade others from getting into a hobby because they think everyone is lying about what it does. The reality is, MiSTer FPGA and FPGA cores are different than software emulation. There is a place for all of them in the overall retro gaming community. Pick whichever one you want and have fun. That's all I ever ask, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.